This morning on BRN, despite overall inflation remaining stable, grocery prices still rose. And joining me now to help break it all down is Dr. David Anderson with Texas A&M University. David, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Hey, great to be with you this morning.
Yeah, it's always great checking in with you and learning about food prices. I want to start and their impact throughout the macro and also the micro parts of our economy and the global economy. Let's start with the basics, though. My understanding in reading some of the CPI numbers, and again, I'm not the economist, you're the economist, is that inflation has actually stabilized, that we're not seeing the same amount of inflation that we had seen year over year. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's basically right. If we look at the data, we see some stabilization or slowing of inflation, which is, that's why the Federal Reserve works to increase interest rates is to slow inflation. And so we might think of that as working. Um, and that's the broad number, the big broad CPI number. If we were to dig in a little more, we'd see some differences in different categories of items like we normally do.
Let's talk about beef, where I know you have a certain area of expertise. Has beef prices, meat that we get at the store, has that come down or has that actually gone up?
Well, kind of the broad number, if we looked at choice quality grade, that's the USDA grade. You'll see a lot on the packages at the grocery store. That was flat. It may have been down a cent or two, flat overall. But if we dug into individual cuts, some of them have increased dramatically. Ground beef, for instance, is higher. If we looked in the wholesale market over the last month or 6 weeks, we see even higher prices for ground beef, really jumping higher. And it's really, we see that for most other cuts as well, driven by a couple of things. One is just plain tighter supplies. We've had fewer cattle going to market over the last couple of months. Uh, Tighter overall supplies is contributing to higher prices. But also, if we look back over the last couple of months, here we are in, early mid-July, and, we hit grilling season, building up to Memorial Day and where we are now. So we get a bump in demand, too, from consumers buying for what they're going to throw on the grill. So we have both a supply and a demand component into what we see for beef prices.
David, kind of following through from the macro to maybe a little bit down, I don't know what you would call it, the economic term is, but I'm going to call it the micro. I know it's not really truly micro. Let's talk about restaurants, because restaurants have to buy things like beef. They have to buy supply. Are their prices coming down? And what does that mean for the consumers? The consumers still eating out, or are they packing it in and saying, I'm actually going to do a little cooking at home?
Well, I think that's been a shift we've seen going on with prices at restaurants going up faster than what we see prices, what we call food at home, kind of the grocery store price. And that should lead people to shift around. And I think that's what we see in some of the data that's out there. If we looked at some sales data that gets reported by a number of companies for particularly grocery stores, we see the meat case, the where all your choices in the meat case, where sales have increased compared to a year ago. Sales are up, but not only, I always look at that and I think, well, gosh, it's probably because prices are higher. But if by what they're reporting of what they're seeing, not only are prices higher, but sales volume is up too. So people are buying, broadly speaking. But I think that does mask consumers and their individual budget, where they are in their budget, as to what they can spend on and what they choose to spend on as budgets get tighter.
Yeah, Americans, David, I mean, there are exceptions to every rule, but Americans seem to like their beef. In the past, we've talked to you, David, about egg prices. It seems like egg prices have abated, even though there's still the avian pandemic or avian flu. There was a whole bunch of killing of birds. As a result of that, prices went up. It seems like egg prices have gone down, and eggs are also a staple of the American diet.
They really are. Whether it's the shift in our diets to trying to eat more protein, eggs are a big part of that. cooking and baking, and eggs are a staple. And you're right, egg prices have come down dramatically from the highs we saw in the spring. They're higher than they were a year ago. They remain, but we also have fewer egg laying chickens on hand now than we did a year ago. So we've got less supplies also. And so I think that's an important part of this is we do have fewer supplies of chickens laying eggs, and that just kind of tightens things up and keeps prices higher. But we're well below where we were at the shockingly high prices this spring, when HPAI was really much more evident, happening a lot more often, and resulting in the loss of a lot of birds.
David, we have talked with you, I feel like for quite some time about tariffs. Recently, there was an announcement. We're recording this on the 7th of July, Monday, the 7th of July. I think there was an announcement saying some of the tariffs were going to be pushed off till August 1st, even though tariff notes are going out on the 7th at 12 p.m. I don't understand the correlation, but I don't do negotiations like that. So what does that mean to our food supply and some of the relationships we have with global producers?
Well, I think really it contributes, as you point out, August, July, this announcement, that announcement. So much is up in there. It adds a lot of uncertainty, and I think it adds some volatility to things. I think it's worth thinking about too. Much of the food we consume, we produce here in the U.S., but there's some big items that we import. Heck, we all know coffee, avocados, a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables come from other countries. They hit different marketing windows. We may produce those items here, but our harvest is at one point of the year. Other places have different growing seasons, which allow us to have what we see at the store in the produce section year round. And so we do import. And then for some items too, we export a lot. Things like, the kind of the big commodities, corn, soybeans, wheat. We're major world exporters. We export beef and chicken and pork to other countries. We also import beef as well. So it's really an interconnected agricultural market. I'll point out one other thing I think is interesting as we think about
Sure.
the restaurant side, particularly. The what I'll call the raw materials, the meat and vegetables on your plate. That's only part of the costs. I've seen a couple of interesting stories lately about, the styrofoam containers if you take takeout. Uh,
Yep.
the the you go to a place, they make particularly if you're standing in line and they put your plate together or whatever you're going to take away, they've all got gloves on, right? And so almost all of those things are imported. And so I think where we can think about tariffs hitting restaurants' bottom lines and squeezing their margins is a lot of the other things that go into putting that plate in front of you. All of that other set of stuff. It's not just the food items, the food part of it as well. So, and a restaurant's really caught in a bind. Those costs are going up, yet they got to put a plate in front of you that is competitively priced, that it's something you can afford, and that draws you there versus some other choice.
Well, point well made, David, or points well made. I want to end on food pantries. This has been a difficult time for many Americans, whether have a job, you're homeless, whatever. A lot of Americans rely on food pantries. Those food pantries have to get supplies in order to provide resources to the homeless and other people of need. They're under extenuating circumstances as well. A lot of financial pressure to fill up the pantries.
And I would also say a lot of people who we might call the working poor, that they work, they have jobs, they're just not very well paid. And so we have a lot of people in society that are even our neighbors who rely on food pantries. I think the thing people probably don't realize sometimes, it's not just your local food drive or local donations, but food pantries across the country have relied heavily on federal government assistance
Mm-hmm.
to provide food, including, we've had things where federal government has provided funding for food pantries to buy from local farmers. and it would appear in the big bill that just passed, a lot of that is drying up and will be gone. And so I think it leads to a lot of concerns about where are our food pantries going to get the resources they need to help those in our communities. And you know, relying on your local food drive is only a small portion of what our food pantries really rely on to help feed our neighbors.
Yeah, really well said. David, we're going to have to leave it there. We'll have to pick up the conversation again. You and I could talk for hours. There's so many important elements to this, but we will find out more as the tariffs unfold, as the markets change, as the economic picture becomes murkier or clearer. I'm not sure which one. David, great to see you. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Hey, thanks. Great to see you.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website, and your subscription helps support all this great BRN content. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.